Mr. S.K. Reddy. S.K. Reddy is the Chief Product Officer of AI Division at Hexagon. He's an AI and ML expert at many successful startups, and he's an entrepreneur. He's an AI startup advisor, and he's a frequent speaker at multiple conferences, local as well as international conferences. So we are very thankful to him for volunteering to speak at our event. So please welcome him with a great round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, I don't normally need a microphone because I think when I was a kid, I ate a microphone, so I can speak loudly. We're going to talk about adopting AI in various organizations, the approach, the ideas, suggestions, techniques, good ideas and bad ideas and stuff, and then of course I'll be more than happy to receive any feedback you have or any different ideas or any ideas of your own you would like to share. I'll be happy to take that with me. But this is more of a concise view of how to adopt AI into the organization. It's a small organization, medium-sized, and big organizations. The topic itself is so wide that 1 hour is not sufficient, but I'll try to make it smaller. And because we have audience here seems to be more enthusiastic, so we can even make it more interactive too. 6:30 p.m. on a Thursday evening, so I'm sure you're all tired. To make it a little more exciting, I think I'll tell a story. My wife tells me, don't tell me any more stories, but I would like to tell you guys a story. Not really a story, it's more of a scenario I would like to play for you guys to see how things are changing in the world, especially in the context of AI. Some of the traditional strengths of an organization which you think is a strength is not really any more strength, and so things are changing. If you've read the book David and Goliath by sorry? Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about your strength actually could be your weakness, and your weakness could be actually your strength, and then he talks about various examples of that. But I would like to talk about how things are changing in the last 4 or 5 years, especially because of the AI. And just to drive home the point how things are changing, let's play a small an activity. Let's say this is the year 1995, and I am asking you to make a prediction what's going to happen in 2010. Okay? I'm going to tell you 2 products which are being introduced in 1995, and then I'll ask you to make a prediction which is going to be a super successful product in 15 years from now, by 2010. And then we'll talk about, I would like to highlight in the process, I would like to highlight how things are, the common sense ideas of factors that will create success are no more the factors. So I'll talk about 2 encyclopedias, companies developing 2 different types of encyclopedias. So in 1995, Bill Gates at Microsoft announced they're going to create a fantastic new encyclopedia. No more just paper-based, it's going to be a CD-based, and hence lots of pictures and images. They're going to hire writers who have real good credentials. They would write based on the payments they're going to receive. They're going to write on various topics. Very smart, intelligent program managers from Microsoft who are there to get their bonuses and promotions. They are overseeing this project. Bill Gates himself put his credibility online, saying that, okay, we're going to have a fantastic encyclopedia which is going to be different from the paper-based, which the people have been accustomed to, and they're going to start working on this product. So that's one encyclopedia product. There's another one which actually came a few years later by an unknown company, never heard of that. They said we're going to have an online encyclopedia. Anyone can write whatever they want to. No one is going to do a quality check on what you're writing. No one is going to get paid a single penny. No one will be overseeing anything. The entire endeavor is a non-profit activity. No people like Bill Gates of that credentials standing behind the product. And what am I talking about? Wikipedia. So it's 1995, actually Wikipedia announcement came I think a few years later. It's in 2010, based on the current common sense business approach, which product do you think is going to be super successful? We know the answer. In I think 2009, Microsoft announced that they are canceling the product, they're not going to support it anymore. Today, even for many of the artificial intelligence products companies are developing, especially the text processing, they're using Wikipedia. There are more than 3 million English language, just English language based articles. There are more than 3 million on any type of topic you can think of. So AI is that enabler, I think, is going to create such capabilities in the organization which people have not thought of earlier as a strength. And I'm going to talk about some of these approaches, what people have done. There's a tremendous amount of impact on the economies, even just the GDPs of the countries, if you start using AI. If you look into some of the numbers there, the average GDP growth is going to be almost double if the country start adopting AI. That's prediction according to Accenture. And I'm sure you would have heard of Gartner's hype cycles. They've been publishing for the last at least 15, 16 years. I actually wrote a blog last year capturing all the hype cycles, especially hype cycles in the context of emerging technologies from 2001 to 2016. I actually even added a couple of months ago, 2017's hype cycle. I wanted to myself do the research to see, okay, are these hype cycles really fruitful to study? Are they making the right predictions going forward in the future? So I looked at hype cycles from 2001 to 2010, and then I looked at, let's say in 2011, 12, 13, or 15, were these predictions coming true? And I actually felt, and I've got the evidence, that many of these hype cycles are accurate. They're making good predictions. So if you look at the peak, you see machine learning and deep learning there. So I think that it's really in the peak and it's going to go forward. But the real message I want to communicate in this slide is not just the hype cycle, but the comparison of that to the crossing the chasm. 30 years ago, 1970s or 1980s, I guess, the book was written by Jeffrey Moore. If you guys have not read the book, I think it would be a fantastic book to read, especially if you don't feel like sleeping in the night. You should read the book. And it'll put you to sleep immediately, but it'll be a good information for you to explain how technologies or products are invented. Some of these innovative companies, innovative people, they develop product not for any reason, not for fame, not for money, but they feel passion, they fall in love with the product and they just start developing the technology. But of course, the for-profit companies, when they start adopting it, the so-called early adopters, there's always a chasm. So you have the innovators who are developing this new technology, and you have the early adopter companies trying to adopt it to see the value in that, and there'll be, of course, a few failures. There'll be a more popular, media-wise, more popular failure stories than the success stories. And even some of the innovative companies taking different approaches to come to the same solution, they will disappear too, but eventually there'll be some consolidation. But the point I'm trying to make is we are at that stage of crossing the chasm. I see personally this tremendous amount of chasm of innovative companies trying to develop those the technologies and the early adopting companies trying to adopt it for benefit for the companies. And people have to be aware of that. In other words, if you see one failure story, oh my God, this is not going to work, then you are actually falling into the chasm there. And I want people, especially the executives, to be aware of that. There's lots of research being published, and you can go to Booz Allen, Accenture. This is Boston Consulting Group. There's so many research available about the benefits of AI, and I don't want to talk about the benefits, but there's tremendous amount of impact of AI happening. And let me see if I have an example. And of course, there is a research published recently by Stanford University on how these AI models, how accurate these models are, how good they are. I want to really draw your attention to which one? The bottom left one, object detection. The point there is the image processing models are even better than human beings. And I want to really talk about that because I want to give an interesting anecdote about this. What is the meaning of models being more accurate than human beings? Typical human being, the top 5 accuracy rates is around 5 to 6%. That means every 100 images I show you as a human being, you are prone to make errors in 5 to 6 images. Whereas models can only make errors around 3.6. So not more than 3 or 4, it makes an error. So actually, model is a lot more intelligent. But the real point is, if you have any of those interesting pictures which you don't want to share with anyone, but you want to put it online somewhere, and you think you've put some blurring technique on that so that no one can figure out, model can still figure out. So don't, if you have any funny pictures of yours, be careful about putting it online, because the model can easily figure out what you have. But the point is, on the text processing side, audio processing side, or image processing side, AI is really making tremendous impact. If you want any further questions, I can talk about what the impact is. But if I have to, if many CXOs ask me, okay, how do I do? What should I do to adopt AI in the organization? And first of all, I always ask, why do you want to do AI in the first place? It's not like a technology like a SOA, service-oriented architecture, which came around 10, 15 years ago, or it's not like a new developing language called Java, but it's, you've got to understand what the business benefit is and what do you think AI is for. Some of the questions I think companies need to answer to yourself is, do you know your challenges? Do you know why you want to do it? Is it just because your competition is doing it, you think? Or is it because the board mentioned? Is it because you just heard your competition is doing it? And that's one. The first questions I think people need to be answering those. If you look at the research on the right bottom, it talks about every company they interviewed, they found, even though it's just the difference in the timeline, the executives believe, but they did figure out, almost all the companies felt the AI is going to have a tremendous impact on their business and all the competition's business. Whether it's in the short term or the long term, that the opinions differed, but everyone believed there is going to be a large effect of AI on the business. It's not easy to adopt anything new. And again, if it's a medium-sized company, a big company, even a small company, or geographically distributed company, I think you have so many challenges, not just the culture, but so many other things too. But I just want to highlight the first point I always ask is the chasm between ambition versus awareness. Yes, I want to accomplish all of these things. I want to get so much of margin improvements or revenue improvements. I want to get new products. I want to have my customer satisfaction to tremendously grow. But then, do you know what it takes, especially in the context of AI? So that there's a good amount of chasm in the minds of the executives between what they want and how they can accomplish that. And there's a huge gap in the awareness, the basic awareness part itself. And there's not much of visibility. Also, everyone is talking about AI, and there's not enough talent available, more not just in terms of implementation talent, but also at the executive level or the change management level. If you're doing a transformational activity in the company, the awareness of what it takes to do and what are the downsides and the upsides that takes for the organization to move in the process is not available. And there was a nice quotation I found: don't invest in AI just because you want to do it or just for any other reason, but find a business objective you want to adopt, and then you can adopt AI for that. Again, I don't offer consulting services. I focus on products for my company, but based on my experience and based on the experience I've been watching some companies, I do advise a couple of startup companies. But if someone asks me, okay, what are the top 8 questions or top questions I need to be focusing on, if I'm the CXO in the organization for adopting AI, these are some of the questions I would say. I'll have individual slides for each of that. Organization need to be ready for anything new you want to adopt. It won't happen automatically. Organizations have to plan for it, have to do it. But these are some of the questions I think people need to do. I would talk about something called tipping point assessment in a different slide later, and every organization has to understand what tipping point assessment is. And in the simple words, how much of losses can you afford without adopting this new technology is your tipping point. So in other words, you can afford to go this much time, this much market share, this much customers, this much revenue, whatever it is. What is the amount of money you're ready to lose when you start, before you start adopting AI? Awareness is a huge issue. I normally speak in conferences in Europe too, and I interact with lots of companies, even during conferences and outside too, and otherwise a lot of people connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a awareness issue, what AI can take it. When I say awareness, if you guys are executives here sitting in the audience today, you may know at a very broad level what AI can bring. But many times AI can solve certain problems or AI cannot solve some problems. I'll tell you a scenario. For the last 2 years, 2.5 years, image processing models have become so popular, whether it's in a surveillance situation or a healthcare situation, or maybe in airports, you have image processing models or even video processing models watching situations and then making a prediction on what's happening and then alerting, let's say, the doctors or cops and other people. There are 3 problems in the process of using video cameras. One is privacy concerns. People just don't want the pictures to be taken. Number 2, it's called darkness. Let's say if you're a healthcare situation and the patient is actually sleeping in the night, but if you want a model to track whether the patient is still doing okay or not, or does he or she need medical attention. I was talking to a company in Berkeley, started by a PhD student and then 10 bachelor students working as developers. They are developing an image processing model that will track the situation of an Alzheimer's patient. Alzheimer's patients, actually, they're so frail, even when they sit down on a chair or they sit on the bed or even they lie down on the bed, they do it so slowly, but sometimes they're not really sitting on the chair or sitting on the bed, they're actually falling onto the chair or falling onto the bed. A trained medical professional only can figure out when the patient is sitting voluntarily or actually sitting or falling involuntarily. And that's when the patient needs some attention. You can't have a medically trained professional all the time available for Alzheimer's patient. So what they've done is they actually developed a model which is sitting on a camera, video camera, tracking the situation of the patient and then alerting the doctors. In those situations, I think is fine for privacy concerns, but what if the patient is sleeping in the night? You turn off the lights and then you sleep. The model cannot work because I think the picture is so blurry or is no picture at all. Third problem in the image processing situation is called line of sight. If the patient or if the object being tracked is not in the sight of the camera, you cannot find out what's happening. The model cannot find. Let's say the camera is focusing from here on the wall and towards this. What if there's something happening in the outside this room, or in the other room behind the camera? There's no camera there. So 2 years ago, a new area of research has started, and that's detecting human activity using Wi-Fi router signals. This research is so recent, I think it's only for the last 2 years, and there are a few papers published. A lot of academic and research organizations have published it, and it's not come into regular for-profit companies. I've been consulting with a big networking company the other day. They're working on this. You can actually use a router signal to track human activity, like standing, sitting, falling, breathing, typing, even which key you're typing. There is a paper published, if you guys want to, you can search online. There is a paper published which actually can figure out which keys you are typing. And you could be sitting at the far end of the room. As long as the router signal is reaching you, the model can figure out what you're typing. Sounds scary. Let's not talk about the scary use cases, but I think it can actually track whether the patient is sitting or sleeping or even breathing or not breathing. So the research is evolving constantly. The awareness, I talked about awareness, executives have to be aware of what would be the right approach, right data, and right technology to use AI to solve a use case. That clear awareness is missing even at the executive level, or even at the mid-level, or a VP engineering, or a director engineering level too, in terms of what's the right approach to take. Organizations have to be really careful, and they have to understand what it takes, the how and what of AI. And of course, there's a little bit of research which I got from Sloan, MIT Sloan paper on what are some of the things companies do. This is an interesting research. Actually, MIT Sloan, when they published a report, they divided companies into 4 different categories. Pioneers are the more important ones. Pioneers are companies which actually are focusing on AI or any technology for that matter. There's a very interesting research I found by Boston Consulting, which said any company with mature management techniques, they seem to get better benefits in terms of revenues and market share or customer satisfaction when they implement a new technology. Let's say in the case of AI, mature governance brings mature or better returns. And even though this research is done by entirely different organization, they found pioneers have better governance processes. When I say better governance processes, they actually have good metrics to track. They have a good process to identify the objectives, short-term, long-term. They have good process to even track, and they have good process to get the feedback from both the customers and within the employee organization to find out what's the right thing and what not the right thing to do for the organization. You know, a long time ago when I started teaching in a university as a adjunct faculty, I was a little nervous to go and talk very first time, and then I was asking an expert, how do I make sure people pay attention to what you're talking? He said body language is always the best solution. I think if people are leaning forward, their computers open, they're typing furiously, and when you walk up and down, they're looking at you, the facial expressions are changing, then I think they're really engaged. But when people lean back and there's not much of facial expression changes happening in the face and they're not writing anything, then you got to start worrying. So on a Thursday evening at 6:45 at 7 p.m., I think a lot of people, I think they're not even smiling. So I have to worry whether I'm engaging you enough or not.
You're doing great.
Thank you. I'll tell you a story, yeah, just to get off this monotony of talking about AI. I don't know. I don't have a picture. I think I thought I would have it, but I don't have it. Nvidia published a research recently. They developed an AI model that will create images of human beings based on just the text, and then of course it takes images of real people and creates new images of people. There is a test online, and if you guys are interested, send me an email on my LinkedIn. I'll send you a link to that. There are 6 images of human beings, and you are supposed to pick which one is a real human being, in other words, which one is not a touch picture, and which one is a AI created picture. I normally do that in my conferences whenever there's an AI, especially it's an image processing type of conference, and I ask people, pick a number. I show 6 pictures, and people say 1, 3, 5, or all 5, maybe all 6, or 1, 2, 3. Even though at the end of that, I tell them all the 6 pictures are fake or all created by the machine, the mere fact that the audience, the opinion from the audience, just that 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, the audience opinion is mixed because the pictures are so real sounding. The progress AI is making, I think, is really interesting. And I was talking about data. If you're really looking to start a company and you're looking for a nice, fantastic idea, forget about AI. Develop a company which creates data. You will get a lot more money for the data. And there is data available there. In other words, use your intelligence to extract data from the so-called noise. Let's say from a transportation company, or from a healthcare situation, or let's say a manufacturing company. There's lots and lots of data available. Even there's a company called LexisNexis. Again, I'm not a paid speaker for them. They do an online question answering for a legal scenario. Let's say, oops, I was driving fast, the cop gave me a ticket, I was only 2 miles above the speed limit, but the cop was very rude. I was really in a rush because I got to go to the hospital, or I was going to, maybe I was need to go to the restroom, and hence I was driving fast. Can I go contend in the court? Would the judge give me a favorable judgment, you think? I know I'm talking about $150, but $200. And the model can actually answer those questions. And for those scenarios, starting from those scenarios to whether it's a surveillance, security, safety, healthcare, restaurants, whatever, there's lots and lots of opportunities for you to create data. So you actually may want to think about starting a company of extracting data. And of course, there are some companies like even Google and Microsoft are actually going to countries where the privacy concerns are not so tough and getting healthcare data for there so that they can develop models. And talking about healthcare models, there's one example which has become very popular among AI world is in one experiment, the experimenters actually picked 100 X-ray images of patients, and then they showed it to 17 different radiologists. I think an X-ray of some, let's say, broken part or whatever, I think maybe a scan, maybe I think it's a scan of a tumor. They asked 17 different doctors to predict what stage this cancer tumor is, and then they turned around and asked a model, an image processing model, to make a prediction. And 100% of the situations, the model was a lot more accurate than the doctors. But if you are looking to start an AI company in healthcare, never say that we are going to replace a doctor. You will never get money from VCs. You only have to say we are empowering or enabling doctors, and then you'll get money. But in all of the situations, you need to have data. 80% of the effort I have seen in my projects, and that's what I've heard otherwise too, 80% of the effort goes into just making sure the data is available. In my previous company, and currently also, we're working on developing a platform that will pre-process data. So my another prediction is after data being so important, the next important thing will be every company, maybe in a year from now, will start looking for a platform that will bring the data in and keeps it ready, cleans the data and keeps it ready. So we were working, we developed a platform, we were working with this, we used to work with this company, a San Francisco-based company, which has around 200 satellites in the sky. It takes 500,000 images of Earth every day. The size of each image is around 2.2K pixel by 2.2K pixel. They have 500,000 images every day. And just the image part, no text, no audio. They want to turn around and give it to, let's say, a shipping company or a transport company or a government. And they want to develop models that will make sense out of these images. For example, a shipping company wants to find out when the ship is going to arrive. You actually you can figure out the direction and the distance the ship is moving. There are use cases where a retail company wants to find out about the sales coming up in the next quarter. They want to find out the number of cars parked in their parking lots. Number of cars parked, how long they've been parked, and what size cars, small size, if it's a family car, if it's a small car, 2-door, 4-door, and the color of the car. So they're trying to look at all of these factors to make a prediction what type of people are coming in, and hence see if there's a difference between the store located in this location versus the store located in this location, and see if they can do something different. That's an image processing platform alone, but there will be companies coming up which will take all of your data, pre-process it, and keep it ready. And hence, one fine morning, if your marketing guys comes up and say, you know what, we're going to offer a new promotion for our customers. Can we develop an app and can we figure out what's happening with the data? You already have the pre-processed data available. You have to develop the app and run it together. So that will be the next platform in terms of having data available. Also, on the right side of the data, here, just only 3% of the companies were found to have good quality data. So if you are a company and if you feel that you have data, and if you go to a company that say, we have data, you got to take it with a pinch of salt. This is some other comments too about the planning, what's the plan, what's the SWOT analysis, budgets, capability, do you have team, help, how to manage change in the organization. For example, if you're a geographically distributed company, or if you have been acquiring companies and hence the culture is not uniform, how do you manage change? That's another issue you've got to be careful about. Remember I talked about when I was speaking for, teaching in a university for the first time, and then I was nervous. I asked a professor, what should I do? He said, body language is the first suggestion. Second suggestion is, make sure audience get to do something every few minutes so that they won't go off to sleep. So I have put so much of text in each slide, even though it's against the basic fundamental presentation skills thing. I've put so much of text that it'll take a little more effort for you guys to read it, and hence you'll be awake. Or you raise your hand and take pictures too, so that you're doing some activity. This is a survey done with Kaggle on what's the biggest problem. And if you look into the biggest problems are, you don't have good data, and if the second biggest problem is lack of talent. In my last slide, I will talk about how to get maybe some free talent. But organizations have to think out of the box in the process. But talking about out of the box, I'll tell you a story. In 1980s, there was a famous music band called Van Halen. They were extremely popular. 1980s, especially the teenagers and lots of young people listening to the music. Whenever they used to organize a concert, it used to be sold off weeks before the actual event. Thousands of people used to come. The event used to be such a mega event that apparently they used some 20,000 decibels of sound. Multiple kilowatt of electricity will be consumed in the process. They actually have hundreds of security guards managing the crowd. The stage for this, the people, the band, was at least 10 feet tall. But they were so famous, the band was also famous for their arrogance. They used to be extremely, the myth was they were extremely arrogant. And one of the reflections of the arrogance is they used to have the contract, whenever they used to do a concert, they used to actually give it to a third party to organize the whole concert. So that the band just comes just a couple of days before, they would have at least some 20 or 30 trucks full of material. They come, set up in 2 days, do the performance and leave. But the main organization used to be given to the local organizers. The contract they used to sign was 100 pages. Whereas a typical band in those days, when they sign a contract with the local organizers, it used to be 4 or 5 pages, but these people actually had contract of 100 pages. And they used to have very weird clauses in those contracts. For example, I still remember reading some of those clauses. It says, if the event is a Tuesday, we want for lunch green beans and broccoli, but no kidney beans. If it's a Thursday evening, we want burgers with turkey, but make sure there is no other red meat. They used to be so specific in their clauses in the contract. People used to think, okay, you are putting all of these weird clauses just because you can demand it, because they were so popular. But there's one clause which was extremely annoying for the organizers, but very, very curious for all the media why they have that clause. And the clause is, behind the stage, we want in a bowl full of M&Ms, but no brown M&Ms. That used to be the contract clause. There were 2 instances the band actually cancelled their show right at that starting time because they found brown M&Ms in the bowl. The lead singer, guitarist apparently, he actually started beating his guitar against the wall, making a hole in the stage, on the floor of the stage, because they were so mad that there were brown M&Ms in it. Well, people felt this is pure arrogance. Anyway, fast forward after a few years, the band retired, so the media was doing an interview. I said, of course, they were all asking, okay, how was your experience? How did you really create new songs? And why do you think they were so popular? And then they came to this question of brown M&Ms. I said, why do you have this weird clause? If you want M&Ms, what is the difference between all M&Ms and the brown M&Ms? And were you just crazy enough just to say that because you can demand what you want to? He said, no, 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 we actually had a fantastic logic for that. It was not arrogance. I said, okay, tell us. Then he said, okay, fine. So I go back to my professor. He said, tell a story, and the real final answer, don't tell them till the final presentation is over. And then you can keep the engagement. But I'm not going to follow that advice. Organizations, when they implement new ideas, I think you have to really think out of the box. So what they have done in this place is, we have all of these clauses in the contract. That was because based on our experience, this number of people, thousands of people come in, so many security guards, thousands of decibels of sound, lots of electricity being used. There's a possibility of something going wrong and someone getting hurt, and we don't want any impact on our credibility. But because we can't organize everything and we can't go do a quality check for each and every activity, even though we have a 100-page contract, we have really found out all the nice, good practices, we got to rely on these local organizers who are taking our contract and organizing it for us. But how do we make sure that they followed each and every clause? So what we do is the moment we reach the venue 2 days before the main event, of course, the organizers have been working for more than a month to organize the whole place. 2 days before when they come, the first thing we do is we go to the backstage and look for the M&M bowl. If there are brown M&Ms, that means they did not read the contract carefully. We would check for one more after that, like maybe we check the floor, or we check the how sturdy the poles are on which the stage is set, or how strong the wires are, or extra wires they've got, how secured is the electricity transformer they have set up near the venue, how safe is the audience distance from the stage. We would pick one more, and if they made a violation right there, we will cancel the whole event. That was the reason why they had brown M&Ms. The point I'm trying to make is, when you look for the data, when you look for the right technique, I think you've got to really find the right, you've got to apply the right idea. Many companies talk about ensemble of models nowadays for using machine learning or deep learning. Some techniques work in some situations and some techniques don't work. And being aware of what the right technique is, I think would be a huge help. Anyway, coming back to the survey, the top 3 are the data, lack of talent, and of course sometimes lack of management support too. Tipping point assessment I talked about earlier. How much of a loss can you afford to go before you start working on it? If many people ask me, okay, tell me what can I start focusing on? Within the limited definition of okay, what people can work on, the top area I can suggest would be if you have too much of a human intervention activity going on, let's say you're a loan processing organization, you have lots and lots of paper coming in, or if you are a fraud detection activity, those are things where you can automate it using AI. And of course, second can be maybe the ops can be operated. Let's say resetting your password or checking the network health. Some of those things you can develop AI models to predict, and there are other models, approaches down below you can focus on. Any management discussion you go for, you will have to have one at least 2x2. Have you heard of 2x2s and 3x3s? Just models available for MBA guys who have done it. Here is a 2x2. On the complexity and benefits axis, you can plot all the use cases you have in the organization. When x-axis being benefit, how beneficial it is for you in the organization, and how complex it is to implement that use case. And then if you look at the 4 corners, for the high benefits and low complexity would be definitely the ones you want to focus on, and then you can also focus on the other. This 2x2 will help organizations setting the priorities on what use cases can be worked on. So this will be a summary of checklist in terms of what is that you want to work on. If you want to pick any particular bullet, I can explain it to you guys. I won't explain all the bullets, but if something attracts your attention, I can explain. But there's one, the second from the bottom, the keep an eye on your organization, Taze and Gorillas, but I just want to talk about that. Tay is a bot that was developed by Microsoft, I think, a couple of years ago, that became extremely racist. So you got to be careful about how you're developing your AI model. Gorilla is another image processing model developed, I think, a few years ago by Google. It started making mistakes by picking certain types of people with certain skin color. It was categorizing them as animals, actually as gorillas, even though they were human beings. And that was a huge PR issue for the company. So you got to be careful about whenever you develop a new model, AI model, you don't want to get into it. GDPR is becoming more popular in Europe now, but I think because of the recent event that happened with Facebook and other organizations, data privacy is going to be a huge issue. Talking about that, you know, there's a human biases. We actually, there was a job recommendation model which they found had a bias in itself. All the C-level positions, when the model was making a recommendation to candidates, all the C-level positions were being recommended to only males, even though they were equally qualified female candidates available. As an AI expert, I immediately know what's happening. Just because the data that's available till now has so much of a male orientation of the data, model thinks, okay, the C-level positions have to be recommended only for the males. But then you're actually bringing the biases into the model too. Talking about biases, do you know how many biases exist in a human being, typical biases, and that comes into the data? There are more than 170 biases, human biases, that come into picture. And you should go check Wikipedia, the 170. I thought I'll put a slide here just to show the number of biases. Confirmation bias, for example, or there's so many biases you want to be aware of. The model should not. Everyone talks about AI is the new electricity and new fire and new oil, whatever. I want to make my own quotation. I think AI is the new lawnmower. Why? The first patent for lawnmower was given in 1830. Until then, sports industry was actually played using animals because you never had nice flat ground without grass. In my opinion, lawnmower, I think, has made a tremendous impact on the $620 billion sports industry. I think AI is going to be the new lawnmower for all the industries. I want to add AI to that stack. Yeah. By the way, the original one actually only has 5 levels, but there are enhanced master's models which actually have 9 stacks on it, but not the Wi-Fi and battery. But anyway, AI will get into this stack soon. Last slide, these are some of the difficult questions. I will not answer those them in a public forum because it's being recorded. I'm going to put it on the YouTube. But each one of them, you can pick any other question if you want to talk, I can talk. But some of these questions I think would be interesting for you. For example, number 14, can I get good AI resources for free? I can suggest an idea where you can get for free. And I'm not joking there, you can get some free resources. But similarly, I think that if you have any other questions, I can answer offline though, not at a public forum. Especially, I hear lots of questions about Watson. I do have good friends in IBM, so I can't talk about that. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Thank you. I don't think you have any questions, looks like, so.
No, we have.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
So which are the companies which are making the case in front of the CXO level people about where they can introduce AI in their organizations and things like that? One of the things that you showed was, okay, there is a lack of talent in not only the top management, but also middle management and things like that. So which are the companies that are playing that role?
The traditional consulting companies are doing it right now. And also, I think it's a natural habit for all the CXOs to go for the top 4 or top 5 consulting organizations, also to go for AI. They also don't have that same talent, and they are, of course, hiring a few people. But right now, if you ask for names of companies which are offering such consulting, it's all this top 5 consulting. There are also small boutique companies available which actually can talk to the CXOs. But this is like any technology, any new approach where there's a shortage of talent, especially people who can understand how the technology works as a hands-on experience, and people who actually have the business experience of how to do it and what are the issues that need to be paid attention to, and talent, same person or same set of group who actually can talk to CXOs to explain in the context of the business. Again, CXOs are very smart people, they're very intelligent people, but they have so many factors they have to balance at the same time. So trying to communicate to them, I think it's not an easy thing. But right now, I think that's my answer. Consulting companies are there.
But then, considering the fact that these consulting companies, I don't know whether they have the necessary talent and things like that, is that role being filled by companies like Google and Microsoft, the vendors themselves?
I do hear, I think Google actually has around 500 people, professional services organization just for AI. And the smallest project they ever take is not less than 250K project. And typically they would expect a $1 million project or even more. So if you're looking for a 10K, 20K project for a 1 month, 2 month, they're not going to take it, because that's the amount of demand they're getting. They're getting lots and lots of demand from Chinese companies apparently, because they're not able to find the talent. But also Google as a brand, I think, is going with that too. But again, this is all hearsay. I don't have an authentic first-hand information. But yeah, some just because you have a nice brand on your name, like a Google or a Facebook, I'm sure people will, I think, want to stop and listen to you. Absolutely, yeah. These are the companies like, remember the Crossing the Chasm, Jeffrey Moore's, these are all innovative companies. Whether it's Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, these are the companies that are working, really developing some fundamental AI techniques. So yeah, if people, they talk, I think people listen. Thank you guys, thank you very much, appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.